and uh, and for being here as often as you are, which is most all the time, and that's great. And the connection that we're part of is really a resonance. It's a vibration that goes through us all, and
Yeah.
it sustains us in ways that we can't even imagine. So we use the idea, the concept of a resonance, of a vibration that we're all part of, but it's something greater than the idea of a resonance. So I just want you to know that I appreciate your being here, and I'll share everything that I've ever learned. I'll share everything I've experienced and everything that I've realized for whatever good it is to help everybody. And the goal is for us all to attain the samadhi, to attain the relaxation of all of this. So all this knowledge, all this wisdom, and so on is great, but we're human beings in the phenomenal world. So we have to understand, what's going on around us in order that we can not be attached to it or not have aversion to it.
Yes.
Otherwise, if we don't understand that, then it's going to sneak up behind us someplace and it's going to like nip us in the butt and we're going to be surprised, but by understanding all the vicissitudes of what it is to be a human being and so on, this is how we actually protect ourselves from that occurrence, and we're able to stay in that relaxation, in that samadhi for as long as we're human beings, and then hopefully, we'll attain Buddhahood at some point if that's what the goal is. But the samadhi is our immediate goal.
Interject something.
Sure.
When I left your house the other day, it occurred to me something that it's not a new thought, but it seemed very appropriate. And that is, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's how I see what we do.
You're absolutely right. I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a comforting thought to
Yeah.
be in conference with all of you and the many people who are out on the YouTube, etc. It's very enlivening, to say the least.
Well, I'm sure everybody is in love with your partners, in love with your family, in love with yourselves, and we're in love with each other. And that love is a vibration. It's impossible to explain that to anybody. We can barely explain it to ourselves. The mystery of love or whatever. And but it's like that. You have to experience it to really to know what it means, and to feel that vibration, that invisible connection that binds us all together.
Thank you, and I agree with you.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. So let's do our opening prayers. Today we're continuing our conversation on the jewel ornamental liberation. So let's recite our opening prayers, please. We begin on page 1, the altruistic motivation. And would someone like to volunteer to be the umzev to recite these prayers tonight? Okay. All right. Gary raised his hand. Gary, you raised both hands, so I guess he wants to do it all. Mark, you raised your hand. Would you like to do it?
I can do the English, but I'm not ready for the Tibetan.
Well, then do the English 3 times where it's indicated as 3 times and once where it's only once.
Oh, I'm going to do the English twice, and then somebody will do the Tibetan.
No, just do the English 3 times. It'll be fine.
Okay. This is the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. This is the action bodhicitta prayer. Thus I will achieve enlightenment. I perform virtuous deeds with my body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Is someone going to do the Tibetan?
No, continue in the English, please.
All right, I'll do the long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind
root and lineage lamas.
Better take over for me. I don't know where I am now. You're muted. Lance, you're muted.
We're on the long refuge prayer on page 3, so please continue. You're doing fine. Now you're muted.
The long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind
root and lineage lamas.
Yes, and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Which one is next, Lance?
Taking the Bodhisattva vow, page 4.
Thank you, sir. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. And now the short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha's most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Four immeasurables. Thank you, Lance. Okay, the four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Very good. Can you recite the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva, page 8 in English? Do it one time, and then we'll recite it 3 times in the Sanskrit.
This is the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. Om. Yes?
Yes.
Om. Vajrasattva
Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect. Please continue.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving toward me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind, heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality.
In Sanskrit, Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto kayo me bawa, supo kayo me bawa. Anuraktu me bawa, sara siddhi me prayatsa, sara karma sutsa me, sitsan triya kuru hong. Ha 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 ho, Bhagavan, sara tada gata, bajra mame mansa, bajri bawa, mahasamaya satvaha. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara karma sutsa me sitsan triya kuru hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan. Sara tada gata bajra mame mansa bajri bhava mahasamaya satvaha. Om bajra sattva samaya manupalaya. Vajra sattva tenopa drista dredo me bhava. Suto kayo me bhava. Supo kayo me bhava. Anuraktu me bhava. Sara siddhi me prayatsa. Sara karma sutsa me. Sitsan triya kuru hong. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan. Sara tada gata bajra mame mansa bajri bhava mahasamaya satvaha. And now, Mark, if you will continue and recite the Sagari Mati requested sutra on page 12, and just in the English, please.
Likewise be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food and drink, peacefully, and enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the mantras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mark. You did a wonderful job. So thank you. Gavin has joined us and Sarah has joined us. Thank you all very much. And all the people who watch us on YouTube, thank you very much for watching these sessions. And if you need any questions answered or make any comments, don't hesitate to do that. You can do it on YouTube, or you can go to our email, which is Buddha Practice Study at gmail.com. And if you'd like an invitation to be able to join us for these sessions in real time, then just send a request and we'll send you the information you need to be able to do that. Also is our website, which is buddhapracticestudy.org, that Bernie has
.com.
Oh, it's .com. Sorry.
It is .com.
It's .com. My mistake. buddhapracticestudy.com. Okay, and Bernie is the webmaster for that and done a wonderful job. There's a number of features that are on there. We're adding new things all the time. So if you like the melodies for the prayers that we recite, they're under the audio section. So that might be something that you'll have a benefit of right away. Okay, so we're talking about the jewel ornamental liberation, which was composed by Dharma Lord Gampopa nearly 1,000 years ago at the request of Milarepa to bring all the different oral teachings that were being taught in the area of Tibet, and to be able to unify them so that everybody is talking about the same thing, and all the ideas are being expressed properly, and so on. So these teachings obviously then are quite old and quite authoritative and genuine. So where we left off last time, we were talking about in part 2, we were talking about the working basis, which is the precious human life. This is what we have to work with. You know, we want to be able to understand our true nature, our Buddha nature. But in order to do that, we have to approach it through our working basis, our precious human life, our precious human body, which is our physical body, our intellectual mind, and our spiritual mind is what we are developing in order to have the real experience of what this is. What this is all pointing to is the spirituality of this. So we left off talking about a point of the 3 faiths. I don't think we got to talk about that. We talked about the 8 leisures, and we talked about the 10 endowments, the qualities of a precious human life, to have a precious human life. So you can refer back to that if you need some notes. If you have any questions, we can answer those questions for you. But the way in which we are doing this, the thing that gives us the confidence to be able to move forward with this are called the 3 faiths. So the first faith is having a trust in ourselves, a faith in ourselves, that we have a yearning, that we have something within ourselves that is moving us towards this spirituality, of being able to learn more about who we are, why we are, and how we are to behave, and so on. What is the correct way in which we should be living our lives, and so on. So the what, the why, and the how. So we have this yearning to want to do this, but we don't know exactly how to do that until we find a teacher, until we find books, until we find teachings, we find brothers and sisters who satisfy the yearning, the trusting that we have in the teacher, the trusting in the trusting faith, to be able to have faith in the teacher. So we may go through a whole succession of teachers, and we might find that the teachers don't negate each other, that they build on each other. So we may find a teacher who takes us to a certain level in these understandings, in this process, but then we reach a level that they take us to, and then we want to go to a higher level, and it may require another teacher to do that. So just like reading different books exposes us to different levels of philosophy and practice and so on like that, it's that trusting in the integrity and to the wisdom and the skillful means of the teacher. So we trust in that. We have faith in that. We have faith in ourselves and our yearning. We have faith in the teacher. As we begin to engage more and more in the teachings, we begin to experience some clear understanding of what is being taught to us, what is being shown to us. We begin to have our own realization. We begin to have our own experience. And what this leads to is our clear faith that this is actually working. We see clearly that this is moving us closer to the Dharma, that we are becoming more and more virtuous, we're becoming more and more happy, We're seeing the things that upset us and move us away from being happy. And we're learning the processes that take us back to being able to put our wheels back on the track, so to speak, to re-engage with the Dharma, to continue our Dharma teachings and like that. So these are the three faiths. These are the three trusting faiths that we have in ourselves, in the teacher, and then in the Dharma itself. The clear faith that the Dharma is working, that the Dharma teachings are working. And of course, the Dharma teachings come from Buddha Shakyamuni, that this was his articulation of his experience of learning what it is to be a precious human being and to attain enlightenment, to attain liberation. So these are the instructions that we're following. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is an exclusive way to be able to do this. There are many other traditions that speak of this true nature that we have, that we call Buddha, this Buddha nature. But there's other traditions that may call it the Christ, they may call it Jesus, they may call it God, they may call it Mohammed, they may call it Yahweh, many different names. They may call it Krishna or Brahma, many different names. They may call it the way, the Tao. There's many different ways, and they all are speaking of the same essence. Some do it better than others. Some have more articulation, have more detail, have ways in being able to help ordinary beings to connect to this true nature and so on. And for many of us, the Buddhism is very, very articulate in being able to do that. And this is why we use the Buddhism as a means to communicate this method, this system of being able to connect with our true nature, our heart nature, our heart mind, so our spiritual mind, our spiritual body. So this is all part of being a precious human being. Anybody have any questions or comments about this? Okay. All right. Well, this is chapter 2 of the Jewel Ornament Liberation that we just finished then. So now we're moving to chapter 3, which now we're talking about the contributory cause of the spiritual master. So in other words, for us to be able, as being human beings, to be able to want to approach further and further the Dharma, and we need to have some support. We need to have some help. We need to have the teacher and so on. So the contributory cause for us is the spiritual master, the one who has been there, who has experience and is now being able to have the skillful means to be able to help us to recognize it for ourselves, that it's all within ourselves, and we need to be able to see what it is that is obscuring our being able to understand this, to be able to purify those obscurations, and then recognize our true nature, which has been there the whole time. So the spiritual master answers that need that we have. So we went over this a little bit last time. So the spiritual master will use the teachings, will use the books, the sutras, the teachings of the Buddhas and the masters that came after him and so on. The spiritual master will use a form of logic that we're going through critical thinking, being able to eliminate certain pathways of thinking that lead us to dead ends, that lead us to confusion, that lead us to mysteries, rather than things that lead us to an enlightenment, to lead us to something to say, oh yes, I didn't think of that, but now that really makes sense, and I can see that there is this figurative light that is illuminating the darkness of my not understanding. So this logic would be used by the spiritual master. And the spiritual master will use different kinds of similes, because some of these concepts are very, very subtle. They're very, very easy to misunderstand because we can't speak directly about some of these things. We have to use a simile that it's like this or it's like that. So we talked about that last time when we were talking about someone who is guiding us to a particular place that we haven't been to, but they've been to. They're guiding us there. We talked about an escort who is guiding us through dangerous territory. We talk about a boatman who is guiding us across the river of unknowing. We talked about it in terms of a king who is protecting us. We talked about it in terms of the boatman who is guiding us across the river to get to the other side of enlightenment. And we talked about it in terms of a shepherd, one who is behind the flock and is being able to keep everyone on track to get to the destination of understanding the Dharma, of being able to live a virtuous life, of being able to be a pure human being and so on, a complete human being. So we talked about those last time. And then we talked about that the two major obscurations, if we can lump them together in two ways, are the first one are the afflicting emotions. So the afflicting emotions we've talked about as there's 84,000 emotions. And these 84,000 emotions have all different combinations of confusions that go through our lives and so on. And they can get distilled down to the 5 poisons that through their myriad combinations make up these 84,000 emotions. So we need to be able to understand the causes, the poisons that make these up in order that we may apply the antidotes to be able to overcome, to neutralize those poisons, those emotions and so on. The second thing is the subtle obscuration of a psychic imprint, which prevents attainment of Buddhahood. Now, this is very subtle, as it says. A psychic imprint means a mental imprint that we have. And this is the mental imprint that we think that we can know. The thing that holds us back is our thinking that we have the wisdom, that we have the ability of this wisdom to be able to unlock this within our intellectual mind and to be able to radiate, present this, be this enlightenment through this intellectual process. And we have to rest that. Ultimately, it comes down to that we have to let that go, because that becomes an attachment, that we become attached to this wisdom. And this is why it's so subtle. How can a human being let their wisdom go and still be considered a human being? So this is a very subtle question with a very subtle answer. And the Buddha, the awakened one, is one who has been able to let that go, to be able to let that wisdom go, in order that one may be able to be pure, with no motivation for ego, no motivation for selfishness, no motivation for self-preservation or anything like that. It is totally for the benefit of other beings. So an analogy that we use for that, a metaphor that we use for that, is like the sun, who is in our solar system, that is radiating the light, that is radiating the heat, that warms the solar system, that warms us, that gives us illumination, that we see it. Without the sun, we wouldn't have the energy in order to be able to recognize and see all this. So this true nature is like that radiation, is like the sun radiating like that, like the Buddha, the true nature that is radiating that. So even the word Buddha means the awakened one. one who has awakened to that and sees all the different aspects of this phenomenal nature, but abides within the space, within the absolute nature that for us as human beings is non-dual, is unelaborated, is non-objectifiable. And to be able to experience that means that one has to let that subtlety of our attachment to the wisdom, to thinking that we can know what that is, we have to let that go. So we'll come back to the subtle obscuration of the wisdom another time. But now we continue to talk about the afflicting emotions, because that's something that we can work on now. And that's our immediate task, is to be able to recognize the causes of our afflicting emotions and purify them. So here on page 5, if you've got the outline book, you can see very clearly are the 5 poisons, the 5 antidotes to the 5 poisons, and the 5 wisdoms that are the result of being able to perfect those perfections of being able to overcome those poisons. So you see that the poisons are listed as hatred. The antidote is the loving kindness that we use instead of being angry at what we don't know, or when someone is coming at us with some kind of anger themselves or some kind of aggression. Instead of meeting that with an equal aggression in order to knock them down to the ground figuratively, or to destroy them before they can destroy us, that we show them loving kindness. We show them grace. We look through their hatred at the cause of their hatred, and we try and help them to recognize the cause of their hatred, and we recognize the cause of the hatred, so we don't succumb ourselves to that level of hatred ourselves. We remain virtuous. We don't try and cause them more suffering than we would suffer if we were to be subdued by them in any way, shape, or form. What we develop out of that, what enables us to be able to recognize that, is called the mirror-like wisdom. So we were talking about this yesterday when we were talking about the 5 Buddha families. So the mirror-like wisdom, this is represented by the Dhyani Buddha, the wisdom Buddha, named Ascobia. And so he has this mirror-like wisdom where he sees all things as like a reflection in a mirror. And what we see are just these appearances of what we might think it is. But it's not the actual thing that is happening. We're only seeing a virtual image. And we need to be able to recognize that our phenomenal nature is all these appearances, all these things that we think it is, when actually it is this pure nature of that which cannot be described. We can only see the immediacy of what it appears to be. So we have to be able to elevate our attention. We have to be able to elevate our thoughts. We have to be able to elevate our conduct to that point of not being attached or having aversions to those appearances. We have to be able to let it go. We have to be able to rest it. So we have to see all things like an image in a mirror. It really doesn't exist. Now, this takes quite a bit of practice to do this. Hearing this for the first time, the second time, or the third time, or many more times after that, may not be breaking through for us to be able to accept that and to be able to recognize that. But yet this is something that we have to continue to do. This is the purification of the things that we are holding on to, our wisdom that we think we know. Oh, Lance is talking crazy. That doesn't make any sense. I know better than that. instead of being able to say, well, I may not understand what Lance is saying right now. And he says he's saying words that Gampopa spoke or that the Buddha spoke, but I may not recognize the truth behind them right now, but I'm going to give myself the opportunity to continue working at that, to be able to see that, because I trust in what they say. I may not recognize it right now, but I'm going to trust that they are telling me something that is worthwhile, that I need to spend more time purifying my confusions in order that I may see that truth. So the next of the 5 poisons would be desire. Desire would be the passions that we have, the attachments that we have, the lust that we have, the things that we want to be able to possess that give us identity, that give us some kind of personal ego, something that we can reflect to other beings, that we can show to other beings. Well, here I am, here is my power, here is who I am, and so on like that. And so we overcome this through the faults of samsara. So what this means is I say, oh, well, I have this body and my body is very strong and I have this intellectual mind. It's very powerful. I'm able to understand many things and so on. And I have all these attractions that I'm able to acquire, which is my house and my car and my clothing and my relationships and everything. But all of this is temporary. All of this will not stand the test of time. All of this over time will die. All of this will go away. My physical body will begin to degenerate, will begin to decay, will begin to get sick, and I will die. My intellectual mind is part of my physical body. So when my physical body goes away, my intellectual mind goes away. So all the things that I have intellectualized, all the things that I have memorized, all the things that I have learned, at that time all go away. They're all temporary. All the things that I have in my house, at some point or another, are going to go away. We're going to give them away to other people. We're going to leave them outside and it's going to get rained on. The sun is going to come. The wind is going to blow. They're going to disappear. My car is only going to last a certain period of time before it starts having problems and breaking down, and maybe I have to replace it or something like that. It gets damaged. Many things can happen and so on. So when we begin to think about all this phenomenal nature, all these things that seem to be permanent to us, in the right conditions or in certain conditions, they will begin to decay and fall apart, and they will break down, and they're no longer what they were. They go into their component parts. They can disintegrate into their basic elements or into the atoms in which those elements are made up of, those molecules and the atoms and so on like that. So these are called the faults of nature, or the faults of samsara. Samsara is this ocean of suffering. We've talked about that many times. And this temporary illusion that we live in this phenomenal space that seems permanent to us, that our existence seems permanent, but it's all just temporary. So these are all the faults of samsara, the faults of existence, the faults of phenomenal nature. So this is so remembering that, you see, is what becomes the antidote to our attachments, to our desires. Why am I desiring this stuff that is only temporary? Why am I spending all my time? Why am I spending all my energy to hold on to these things that aren't going to help me when it comes time when I pass away? We don't have, as we say, we don't have any luggage racks on the hearses that take us to the cemetery. You know, we don't, all these possessions we don't need. We came into this world virtually naked without any possessions at all. And when we leave this world again naked without any possessions. We can't take anything with us. What we brought with us when we were born, we can say, were karmic seeds that came from prior lifetimes as being sentient beings and so on. So that's a whole other conversation that we can't go into a lot of detail at this particular time, but we will. But those karmic seeds are the only thing that we bring with us when we come into this life. When we pass away, when we die, all that we have are those karmic seeds that we take with us. That we take with us, these spiritual seeds for what our next life, if we can use that as an illustration of what comes in the future, that we take that with us, what our spirituality is, because the spirit never dies. The spirit has never been born. The spirit never dies. It is continuous. It is that vibration that we were talking about earlier. So recognizing the faults of samsara are able to release us from the desire that we have that makes up so many of our emotions. As we are developing this faults of samsara, as we're recognizing the faults of samsara, we develop the wisdom of discriminating awareness. And this was Buddha Amitabha that we talked about yesterday. The wisdom of discriminating awareness. So what that means is there are times that we need to focus on a particular aspect of our mundane lives. And we need to take care of that. There's a practical reason for doing that. But once we deal with that practicality, once we understand that that can be put onto the side, and we no longer have to be looking at that, at least for some time being. And now we can look at the spirituality of things. We can look at the Dharma. We can look at more investigation as to what all these very subtle things are, the afflictive emotions and so on. So we begin to develop this wisdom of discriminating awareness. We begin to make choices of what our critical thinking is going to be focused upon. So maybe it's something about what it is to be virtuous. Maybe it's something about what it is of karma. Maybe what it is to be in the Dharma, what the Dharma is. Maybe what it is to be a bodhisattva. All these different spiritual terms, that all these words that have these spiritual aspects to them, that we need to be able to focus upon them and be able to understand them and bring them into our body, bring those into our intellect, bring those into our lives, which then we're able to elevate ourselves, again, using that metaphor, to become a spiritual being. So this is the wisdom of discriminating awareness that is symbolized by Buddha Amitabha. Anybody have any questions? Just speak right up, please. So then the next of these 5 poisons is ignorance. The ignorance means not knowing. And sometimes, we don't know what we don't know. But sometimes we act delusionally. And what that might mean is that we know that there's something there, but we're delusional by saying, oh, I know what that is, and I can control that. Or I'm going to give the illusion, I'm going to let people think that I know what it is. And worse than all of that is I'm going to think that I do know all of this and that I know everything that there is to know and that I will always know everything that there is to know. And that I can be delusional that all this is true. So this leads to the lies that we tell ourselves, the lies that we tell other beings. And many of us have this web of lies that we have told ourselves, that we have woven this web of our lifetime that is justifying all the things that we've done, all the decisions that we've made, all the rationalizations that we've made in order to be able to be successful in our families, to be successful in our business worlds, to be successful as being a functional human being in this ocean of suffering, is a web of confusions, is a web of delusions that we have created for ourselves. So again, this takes a contemplation. This takes a being able to remove yourself from an everyday kind of a situation and being able to look at yourself from afar, being able to sit yourself down and being able to calm things, your intellectual mind down, and being able to take a look at the choices that you've been making yesterday, earlier today, last year, and so on like that, and be able to see how this is part of the human story, the delusion that human beings have created for themselves to get to where human beings are in this present lifetime. And you can see that there is repeating themes, that we're bound to keep repeating these things over and over again. And this is the nature of samsara. We're not going to cure samsara for all beings, for everything. The only thing that we can do is be able to liberate ourselves from our own personal samsara, from our own personal ocean of suffering. And if our field of influence helps other beings to do that, well, then that's wonderful. But we can't do it for them. We have to do it for ourselves. So this is all part of the delusion that we think we can do these things for ourselves, that we think we can do it for others, and so on. So all this is all, nested in our ignorance of not knowing what it is that we don't know. So to overcome this, what we need to do is to engage in the antidote of education. That we go through this process of being able to learn all the things that we think we know, but we're not sure about, or we have confusions with, to go through the purification of our wisdom, of what we think these things are, through the education. There's going to be points that we're going to hit where we're going to say, well, I can't go any further than this. I can't educate myself any further than this, but I have to leave an open mind. I have to leave my intellect open to not allow myself to form an opinion that is going to continue my ignorance. I have to say, I don't know, and be able to rest in that I just don't know. Maybe I'll know tomorrow, maybe I'll know next week, maybe I'll never know. Maybe it's not within the bounds of being a human being to be able to know these things. Maybe I have to trust that spiritual nature, that true nature that I have within myself. Maybe it's within that. So to be able to educate ourselves, to be able to recognize these things, brings us to the all-pervading wisdom, because this ignorance, you see, is what permeates everything, and this all-pervading wisdom is the thing that pervades everything. That we, in phenomenal nature, this ignorance is pervasive, but in the absolute nature, the all-pervading wisdom is present, and also is present in the phenomenal nature. And we have to be able to recognize that there are things, we see things appear to be clearly. If you were here with me in this room right now, we're looking at each other and so on, and we don't see all the things that are in between us. But all the things that are in between us, all this atmosphere is filled with things that we that are invisible. We just don't recognize. We can't see with our eyes. So we can't smell, we can't taste, we can't touch, and so on. But yet they're there. So this all-pervading wisdom is like that. Now, pervading wisdom is everywhere, that sees all these things, that recognizes all these things. And we begin to understand that, we begin to perceive that with our heart-mind, with our spirituality. So this is the all-pervading wisdom of Varanchana. So this was, we talked about that yesterday, Varanchana. So, so the next of these is the greed, the poison of greed. Greed means that we have these abilities, we take in these things, we take in these possessions, we take in these talents, these gifts that we have, intellectual gifts, whatever. We take these in and we don't want to share them. We're holding on to them. We've worked hard for these things and they give us identity, and we don't want to relinquish that for any reason at all. And so what we develop is this stinginess. We develop this miserliness and the suffering that comes out of that. The way that we overcome that is through generosity, is realizing that these things are for us to share. They're for everybody. And if we have the talents to be able to acquire these things, it means we'll never lose those talents. We'll never lose those things. We may share them with other beings, but it actually frees us up to be able to do even more things, to do other things that we can share with other beings, to help other beings and so on. So this poison of greed, this poison of miserliness really isolates us from being part of an active community that is spiritually motivated to help all beings. So in order to recognize this, or by practicing this generosity, what we come to recognize is the wisdom of equanimity, the wisdom of equality, the wisdom of sameness, that we're made up of the same things, that we have all the same thoughts as all other beings. We have the same physicality of all other beings and so on. And not only all other beings, but of nature, of the trees, of all the plant life, of all the different animals, of all the sea and all the animals that are in the sea and so on, and beyond into the cosmos and all the things that are made up of all the other celestial bodies and so on. We're all made up of the same things and so on. So this wisdom of equanimity gives us the ability to be able to say, well, why should I hoard this? Why should I be greedy about this when there's everything is for everybody? We can share all this with everybody, and especially the wisdom, the knowledge, and the usage of all this to be able to share with everybody. So this is symbolized by the Buddha Ratnasambhava, the wisdom Buddha Ratnasambhava, the wisdom of equanimity. So he symbolizes the earth, meaning all the treasures of the earth. You know, Ratna means a jewel. So it's like a treasure of the earth, a treasure of the physicality and so on like that, a treasure of the intellectualism as well, a treasure of the spirituality as well, the body, speech, and mind. So then the last of these afflicting emotions, the five poisons, is the jealousy or the envy. And this gets rooted in our feeling that we're not qualified, that we're not worthy, that we have a poor self image of ourselves, a poor self quality of ourselves, that we can change, that we can increase, that we can work and be able to understand more, and to be able to have the generosity to be able to share all this with other beings. We see other beings who may have some of these qualities. We see these beings who have nice houses, who have nicer cars, who have nicer relationships and so on, people, and we become jealous of them. And this jealousy becomes paralyzing to us. It's something that stays kind of in the back of our mind, and it may not be present, thinking, oh, I'm not going to do this, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, my sense of well-being prevents me from doing this, my neuroses keeps me from doing this. It's just acting in the background, and we don't realize that it's there. But yet it makes us anxious. It's the stuff that raises our blood pressure. It makes our heart palpitate when we're in a situation when we think that we're not qualified to be able to do this, that, or the other thing. So this jealousy, this envy just paralyzes us, and we feel that we can't move, we can't do anything. So the antidote for this is fearlessness of our unimpededness. Our unimpededness means that nothing can block us, nothing can stop us, nothing can obscure us if our motivation is pure, if our motivation is for virtue. If we have a fearlessness about our life, if we have a fearlessness about change, then we can enter into any situation where we feel that we're not worthy, and we can show ourselves, and we can show to other beings, but most importantly to ourselves, that we can overcome these what seem to be inabilities to be able to recognize, to be able to improve ourselves, to be able to grow, to increase our strength, and all these different things. This fearlessness, to be able to overcome fearlessness. So as we develop that, as we are developing that, and as a guide to help us to do that, we have the Buddha Amagog Siddhi, the wisdom Buddha Amagog Siddhi that we talked about yesterday, who is the wisdom, the all-accomplishing wisdom, symbolizes the all-accomplishing wisdom. And that through this fearlessness, through this unimpededness, through this being able to penetrate any obscuration, any obstacle, and be able to dissolve those obstacles, and to be able to accomplish all that we need by virtue of the truth, by way of the truth, by way of the virtue, that we can do these things. So some things may still be, logically impossible for us. We may not be able to walk through a wall at this particular point in our makeup of being a physical human being, but as a spiritual human being, we can penetrate anything. We are limitless in the way in which we can move about, and timeless in the way that we can accomplish that. There are no boundaries. So being able to recognize that is the wisdom of the all-accomplishing wisdom of Amagog Siddhi. So as we are working on these afflictive emotions, we develop the wisdoms of these 5 Buddhas. We're not going to be able to do it perfectly, but we are using them as examples of guidance of how to get there. When we see the obstacles of these 84,000 poisons, or rather the 84,000 emotions, we can stop, we can become contemplative, and be able to break down those anxieties, break down those confusions that we have, and be able to analyze them and be able to say, well, what is it that is paralyzing me? What is it that is causing me to do these things, to have these negativities, to have these confusions, and so on? And then by applying the antidotes to those things, we cure ourselves of those, and then we're working towards the perfection of those five wisdoms. So it helps us tremendously to have the spiritual master to not only point these things out to us, but to help us when we make mistakes, to have a presence to be able to say, oh, you're Lance, you're making a mistake. You're too envious, or you're too delusional, or you're too aggressive, or whatever it is, to be able to point this out, because sometimes we get caught up in our own lies. We get caught up in our own delusions. We get caught up in our own rationalizations. And it takes someone to be able to point out to us what our mistakes are, what we're doing wrong. So therefore, we have to invite and accept the corrections, the contributions of the spiritual master, the teacher. So whether it comes in the form of a book, whether it comes in the form of another human being, it comes in the form of a formal teacher, or it comes in the form of our spouse, or maybe our children. Sometimes we can learn a lot from our children, from the people that we work with, other beings. Sometimes we can just hear something that all of a sudden just clicks with us, and we say, oh, there, the truth is being spoken, and it comes in, and I can correct something. Maybe you're watching TV or you read something, and you say, oh, that goes right to this point of confusion that I've been having. So to be able to see the all pervasive wisdom, that it's everywhere, and it's a matter of our being able to recognize it, that makes the difference. Any comments or questions?
That was super impactful for me, what you were explaining, and with the envy and that not feeling qualified or worthy. I don't know, it didn't register or didn't realize like that would be falling into the envy category. Because that's a big one for me, is I think is like a lot of the underlying thing that's um and also I've found that can be helpful too, is like the practice of I forget, I think it's in some different meditation practice or something, but of like rejoicing. I've been trying to do, like, when feeling that way, like other people's qualities, like good qualities, and like celebrating it, rejoicing, even just within my own mind or something, and trying to have that like other mother sentient beings kind of thing that tends to uh,
Rather than be jealous of them, you rejoice at their success or whatever.
yeah, yeah, or if they, yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's been kind of helpful too. And there's also another thing I was thinking while you were talking was, I had an experience like today during my meditation this morning where um, uh, I'll try to not be too long-winded about it, but I was in certain kind of guided meditation, and it was kind of more of an open awareness type of thing, and basically just trying to not interfere with your experience at all and let it be. But I had this experience too of like kind of like feeling like the Matthewness arise almost.
The what arises?
Like the Matthewness, like the self, like that's like sense of this like kind of I don't know, yeah, yeah, I guess that sense of self, or like it felt like what they're referring to with the self grasping too, and it comes with like, and realizing like it comes with this certain almost like ache, like there's something kind of painful about it, of like the contraction of it or something, and seeing that too, that made me think of like the self grasping. For some reason it was making me think of when you were seeing that, of just like that. I don't even know why I brought that up, to be honest, but it was something, for some reason it was making me think of that when you were talking. But
No, that's great. I mean, that's a catharsis of your, being able to express, your confusion and everything. And that's part of what we need to do. We need to confess it to ourselves. And then in a situation like that, you're being generous and being able to share that with the Sangha here. And we rejoice at you're doing that and bringing that to our attention. And doesn't that feel liberating? Does that feel liberating to you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, when we realize these things that are holding us back, it's like taking the baggage off of our shoulders. Oh, I just liberated myself from that concept, that idea, that weight that has been weighing me down, that anxiety. I just liberated it. I just freed it.
Yeah, and that's why, like, for me, I come back a lot when we're having these conversations, or when I'm thinking about practicing the Dharma too, and I think it was one of the so I've been going through this with I've been going through the outline over the week. I forget where it was, but like the attachment to the pleasures of samsara and the activities of samsara, and some kind of like some of the things with that. But anyway, that feeling, and trying to make that feeling go away is something that I've been very aware of, been going on for a long time. But it's kind of like, what is the strategy for it? And I have this like samsaric strategy of like doing something that will get me some kind of praise or acclaim or whatever it may be, and it works for a little
Right.
period of time. That goes away, I feel okay, then it comes back, then it's just like the cycle over and over again, rather than like practicing Dharma by like getting rid of that whole project and doing a different project of like being there for others, and trying to transcend that ego or something. So to me, it comes down to like, what's the strategy I'm using to feel free?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. What the strategy is for your the subliminal strategy that you're using to boost the ego, and the strategy that you ultimately use to diffuse the ego, to release the ego, or at least to reprogram the ego. That's the way I look at it. That you can't destroy the ego, but you gotta give it a good job.
Yeah, and just trying to show with the impermanence for myself too, like that it's never going to work. There's this feeling like it's going to work this time. Like I'll just do something and it'll be good enough, and then I'll just feel good. But like it just always changes. Everything's always changing, so there's no way to make it solid. I'm just on the treadmill every day, all day.
Okay. All right. So now, making this relative to this conversation, how has the contributory cause of the spiritual master? How has this led you to these realizations, or these understandings, or these recognitions?
For me specific,
Yeah.
I guess it's through feeling like having some kind of direction with a practice, and then the repetition of it, because the other habits are so strong, the samsaric habits. So the repetition of going over it and just seeing it over and over again. For me, I need to see the mechanism over and over again of what's causing my suffering until I get sick of it.
As we were talking tonight, did you recognize that we were talking about this last week?
Yeah, yeah.
And did this week give maybe more opportunity for a little bit more clarity?
Yeah, for me, I'm hard-headed. I need the repetition over and over.
Well, you're not alone. We're all like that, and that's part of the wisdom of the system, that these things get repeated over and over and over again. And so it's like, a grinding wheel, a milling wheel, that we're grinding these these things that we're holding on to. It's just grinding them down. It's purifying them. Mark, you had your hand up a few minutes ago. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say that Matt just said something really important, I think, in my humble opinion. which is that he and I at least, or I with him, are stuck in the habits of samsara. Not a doubt in my mind. But you said something 2 or 3 minutes ago before Matt started speaking, which is not news to me, but which is terribly important to keep in mind. And that is that wisdom is all about us. It is everywhere. It is every moment. There is someone or something to bring an enlightenment of just a moment or more. But it is here and it is us. It is our job to become, to prepare ourselves for that. And for myself, that is one motivation among many, to become your student and to learn of Buddhism and to become a meditator, is to prepare myself. And I think it's a marvelous thing. And what you do here is really kind of magical and wonderful. And as always, I thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you very much. But I look at it that we are all, we're part of the lineage of the Buddha. And there are, smaller lineages and so on that have broken off. There have been many masters, and they're all great. And so we're just part of that. We're just part of the conduit of all this wisdom and skillful means being transmitted. So thank you very much for what you said.
You're welcome.
Lance, this is Zara. I had a question. So for the karmic imprint, for chapter 3, the outline, when will you talk more about the karma? So like things that we may be carrying forth.
We get into that in very shortly in chapter 6.
Okay, thank you. I've been listening. My laptop, I had to mute out for the video because my internet, there's a storm, so I had to pull off the bandwidth. But thank you, Mark and Matt. It was nice to hear you open up a little bit. I'm quite the talker, so it's nice when I hear other people sharing some of their organic experiences. So thank you for sharing what you're going through right now, and I'm vibing what you said, what you throw down, what you're throwing down. So thank you for sharing that and being so honest and vulnerable with us. Thank you.
I see that Bernie has his microphone on. Did you want to comment on something, Bernie?
No, I'm just listening to what everybody else had to say.
Okay.
Don't have anything particular to say right now, but
okay. Well, I just want to remind everybody, of course, that, going back over this yourself at your own time during your meditation periods is really what the meditation practice is part of. So just hearing this one time is good, but being able to break it down and be able to analyze it in your own time is very worthwhile. In this book that we're talking about, the Jewel Ornament Liberation, this outline on page 5, it has this quote at the bottom of the page, and it bears reading over and over again. It comes from Sogyal Rinpoche from his book called Glimpse After Glimpse, and we've suggested that for reading by everyone. And but these things, we need to reinforce these things over and over again. And maybe it means watching the YouTube or listening to the YouTube again. I've said this before. This is the way I would learn. I would go to the teachings and I would record the teachings, and then I would come home and I would spend the next day or so going over them and embellishing my notes that I might have taken during the time of the teaching. And it's amazing how many things that you hear when you are able to listen to the recordings compared to what your notes are as you're trying to write them down while you're going through the teaching in real time. So to avail yourself of the technology is really a great thing to do. And by doing that, you may not have to repeat these things as much, or it exacerbates it increases your speed in which you're able to comprehend these things by doing these reviews and so on. And the clear faith, we were talking about the three faiths. The clear faith is how important that becomes. You begin to realize, wow, these teachings are priceless. This stuff is amazing. And whatever excuses I was making not to do these studies suddenly begin to evaporate. And the only thing I really want to do is understand these things more. I want to join the enjoyment body. We talked about that yesterday, the enjoyment body of the Sambhogakaya, to understand what the Buddhas are communicating with us, that wisdom that we have within ourselves, to allow that to come up by means of being able to purify the obscurations that were keeping it bound up. Okay, does anybody else have a comment? Because I want to continue with something that we haven't talked about, the rest of chapter 3, which is on page 6 in the outline book. And that is understanding, that which we might take for granted of who the Buddha is, who the Bodhisattvas are, what is a ordinary spiritual master. So it's important to refresh our memory about these things, not to take these things for granted. So here it says that the Buddha spiritual master, the spiritual master at the Buddha level, where we were talking about the 5 wisdom Buddhas yesterday, Buddha Shakyamuni and so on. Who are those Buddhas at that level? So it says those who have taken birth in form, and those who are meditational deities. So in form would be Buddha Shakyamuni, for instance. In meditational form, it would be the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the 5 wisdom Buddhas that we talked about yesterday. Dhyani, by the way, means wisdom. It's translated as a Sanskrit word for wisdom. Those who are meditational deities embodies the perfection of the purifications. These Buddhas, to get to where they are, had to go through all the same obscurations that we go through. But they had the practices, they had the ability, they had the teachings to purify. And they did it to such a degree that they attained the perfection of those purifications. So this is what we're on the path to do. This is what we would like to do. This is what we should be doing. Now, it may not work in a lifetime for us. It may take many lifetimes, but we rejoice, going back to the conversation we just had a few minutes ago, rejoice that we've got what we've got now. Be happy that we've got what we've got now. And the rest will take care of itself when the time arises. So possessing the primordial unborn wisdom, the prajna paramita, that we have this prajna paramita, we have this perfection of wisdom within ourselves, and it's constantly purifying those obscurations so that what is left is just the vision, just the realization of this pure diamond nature, this indestructible nature, and all of its different characteristics and activities and so on, like this diamond is a simile for that. So this is the Buddha. This is the Buddha nature. The Buddha is the spiritual master of the Buddhas. So what are some examples of this? So we already talked about the 5 Buddha families, the Dhyani Buddhas. But in real life, in human life, who are some examples of this? So, some people may have different that you choose, but I would say Padmasambhava, the Guru Rinpoche. This was the human being. This was the being who was a Mahasiddha, was a great accomplished practitioner, a great yogi from India, who was invited to come to Tibet to bring the teachings to Tibet, to overcome the negativities, the confusion that was preventing people from accepting the teachings, the Dharma teachings, and so on. So he is like a Buddha to be able to do that. That his accomplishments, what he did in his life, was like a Buddha accomplishments to be able to do that. And he's called Guru Rinpoche, that he becomes this great teacher that now from the 8th century, when he lived, that his teachings continue today, and he is like the father of Tibetan Buddhism. So he is like a Buddha. Another is Longchenpa. Longchenpa was the great master of the Nyingma tradition, who came after Padmasambhava, but who was able to articulate many of the teachings of Padmasambhava and be able to have them coalesce around these teachings and develop what is called the Nyingma tradition in Tibet, which is like the teaching of the elders. So he's like a Buddha. Another is Jigden Sumgun, who is the founder of our tradition, of our Drikung Kagyu tradition, this Kagyu tradition, and he was an ordinary layperson who for many, many, many years spent in retreat, going through meditation practice and so on, and came out of that. And later on in his latter years, he finally took ordination to become a monastic. And then he became the founder of this lineage that we are part of. And in many people's hearts and minds, they consider him to be a living Buddha. They talk about that he was a second Buddha in the Kagyu tradition. So he's another example of a Buddha, of a human being that was in the form of a Buddha. Another example would be Gesong Kappa, who is said to be the founder of the Gelugpa tradition. The Gelugpa tradition is the tradition of the Dalai Lama, which today is the most prominent, is the most numerous of practitioners are Gelugpa. Back before Gesong Kappa, it was the Kagyu tradition was the most prominent. But then over circumstances happened and so on, things changed, and it became the teachings of Gesong Kappa. So he's considered to be a Buddha. And there's many, many others that I don't know. I'm certainly not a scholar. My knowledge of this is very, very limited. But there's other lineages. There's the Bun tradition. There was the indigenous tradition in Tibet before the Buddhists came. And then the Bun transformed and accepted the teachings of the Buddha, and it morphed into what we consider to be Tibetan Buddhism. And then there's also the Shakya tradition. That is, I don't know so much about that, but I know that there must be a particular leader or whatever who is like a Buddha in their minds. The Buddha Shakyamuni, who was the Buddha that lived 2,600 years ago, he prophesied that during the time of his teaching, that there will be many, many, many Buddhas that would come, that would continue the teachings. And he spoke of it in terms of 1,000 Buddhas. But that 1,000 Buddhas could be 10,000 Buddhas. It could be 100,000 Buddhas. It could be 100,000 Buddhas, 1,000,000 Buddhas, many, many, many beings being Buddhas and so on. They don't necessarily have to be in human form. They can be in other forms and so on. And I can't go into that because I'm not a scholar like that, but it's taught that way. So there's many, many form Buddhas that are in form and that are form in a form state. The meditational Buddhas are the Buddhas that we talk about, the Dhyani Buddhas, the Buddhas like green Tara, white Tara, the Buddha like Vajrasattva. There's many, many Buddhas, the different Yidam Buddhas, the fierce Buddhas that we'll talk about months down the road, but we can certainly talk about those things. I would love to talk about them because they're so rich in being able to understand the human condition. By understanding this Buddha nature, that we begin to recognize the human condition and what is holding us back, and then what the potential of that human condition to become Buddhas. Because the Buddhas have gone through this process of recognizing all these things. So whether we do it in this lifetime or the next lifetime or whatever, that's what we rejoice for, that we have this opportunity to do that. So then I'm continuing on page 6. The next line here, it says the Bodhisattva spiritual masters. Those are of the Bodhisattva level. It says the higher level form beings, we are form beings. The higher level form beings, the Bodhisattvas, who possess varying amounts of wisdom and purifications. So these are great teachers. So just a short list of those that I could say might qualify as the Bodhisattvas might be like Nagarjuna. Now, Nagarjuna might be regarded as one of the Buddhas, but in any case, he was a great teacher, a great being who brought great understanding of the Dharma to many beings and so on. Another might be Shantideva. Shantideva, who gave us the ways of the Bodhisattva. So he articulated what it is to be a Bodhisattva. And then Gampopa, who was able to put this book together, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and other books, in order that we may understand the human condition and how to be able to transcend the obstacles of being a human being and to be a complete human being by recognizing the true nature, the Buddha nature within being a human being. And then there's other great who are more recent, like Kalu Rinpoche, who passed away many years ago, Dujam Rinpoche, who passed away many years ago, and then Garchen Rinpoche, who is alive today. And many would consider him in Tibet to be a living Buddha, and many would consider him to be a bodhisattva. In any case, he's a great being, a formed body who brings great teachings and understanding. So the more that we can read, the more that we can study, the more that we can receive teachings from these masters and so on, it increases our understanding of what this is, of what the bodhisattva is, of what the Buddha is. Many would say that Jesus was a bodhisattva, if not a Buddha, a bodhisattva who spoke of loving kindness, who spoke of compassion, who spoke of joy, and spoke of equanimity, the qualities of the holy enlightened mind. So whether he was a Buddha, whether he was a bodhisattva, he was a holy enlightened being who had a great message. And other great teachers, that I don't know about, but maybe Mohammed, maybe Moses, maybe other Gandhi, other great beings who we've heard about or whatever, were emanations, were parts of being these holy beings like this. And then there's ordinary spiritual masters who are human and haven't reached the perfection level of being able to be a bodhisattva and definitely not a Buddha, but they are our everyday teachers. And these types of beings, they have certain qualities, and these are qualities that we need to awaken within ourselves, that we need to recognize ourselves. So it's not that we have these beings and we come and listen to their teachings, but we need to take their teachings in and we need to transform ourselves into these masters. So they have the qualities of moral ethics. They have the qualities of the Bodhisattva teachings. They have learned them and they can talk about them. They possess realizations. They have allowed themselves to engage in the meditation practices and have the contemplations and have the realizations of the meditations. That they possess compassion and kindness for all beings. That they possess fearlessness. That they possess patience. That they possess untiring mind, and that they are expert in verbal expressions. So these are our teachers, our everyday teachers, and we need to recognize them, we need to engage with them, and we need to allow ourselves to transform ourselves to become like them. And we rejoice at what they have accomplished and wish them that they may themselves continue on the path and they may reach the bodhisattva level, just as we would like to be like them as spiritual masters, and we would like to become bodhisattvas, we would like to become Buddhas ourselves. So these beings would also have the four qualities of possessing great scholarship, that they would be able to dispel doubt, that whatever he or she says is acceptable as action in pure virtue, that we can be able to recognize the virtue in what it is that they're saying. And this point of it being a he or a she, there's many great female teachers, more and more, because in the old country, in the old world, yes, there was a culture thing that isolated and segregated many women teachers, and because of the misogyny and so on that has been prevalent in Buddhism as well as all the other traditions and so on. But there is an awakening toward that is inviting more and more female teachers and recognizing them and giving them high positions and being allowing them to publish books and to give teachings and so on like that. So there is that. And then distinguishing, so these possess the four qualities of distinguishing the two realities, the reality of virtue, which is nirvana, and the non-virtue, which is samsara. So these teachers, these ordinary being teachers are very good at being able to call these out to us, to be able to illustrate these to us, to be able to help us to recognize these things within ourselves. We say that the teacher, our root teacher, our teachers are the ones who introduce us to the nature of our mind. And the nature of our mind, what we're talking about is our Buddha nature, our true nature. Along the path to do that, we're realizing our ordinary nature. We're realizing our humanness that is causing us the hindrances to get to that point of realization. So we have to go through that whole process. So that a good teacher will be showing us that, pointing that out to us, allowing us to recognize that within ourselves and so on. And these teachers will possess the two qualities of being expert in the Mahayana teachings, the middle way teachings, and also will not abandon the Bodhisattva's vow. And the Bodhisattva's vow is to have compassion and to bring enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. to not be selfish, to be doing this for the benefit of others through the middle way teachings, through the devotion of the middle way teachings and so on. So these qualities, these aspects are of the ordinary teacher, the Vajra masters who come, those who are ordained and those who may not be ordained. It's not it didn't say that these had to be ordained beings. So being ordained is a great accomplishment. It is a recognition of the scholarship and of the realization of those beings and so on. But it's not a necessary thing. Remember, Jigten Sumgun had accomplished great wisdom, had accomplished great realization before he became a monk. He became a monk maybe to satisfy the culture of those who said, oh, well, you got to be a monk. But he had already answered so many of the questions. He had already reached levels of liberation that many of the monastics do not reach. So being a monastic does not qualify you as being a realized being, does not qualify you as being a bodhisattva. You may have great scholarship, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have those higher levels of realization and so on. So it works both ways. So the method of the teachers is for us to be able to attain the level of the teachers, to approach the teachers, we need to attend the master with respect and service, to help them in every way that we can, to attend the master through devotion and reverence, and to attend the master through practice and persistence in the teachings. So there's a strong physical aspect of making sure that the teacher has his cup of water, that the teacher has the books that he needs, that the teacher has the proper seat and everything, that he's comfortable, and that we are giving him the generosity of our wealth of money, that these teachers have given everything that they have in terms of the physicality. Their only job is to be teachers and so on. So we have to support them, that they have funds, that they have money and so on to be able to take care of themselves like that. But the most important thing is the dedication of your practice. The dedication of the practice and the persistence, the perseverance to continue the teachings. This is the greatest gift that you can offer your teachers, to tell them, to let them know that I'm practicing. This is what I'm practicing. Maybe you can give me some help, but here's what I'm doing. Here's what I've gotten out of the practice, and I will continue to do the practice. This is the greatest gift that you can offer your teachers. So the steps to receive the teachings are the preparation to receive the teachings, the teachings with bodhicitta, to prepare ourselves to come into the teachings, having prepared ourselves, having to take in refuge, to do the prostrations, to do the nunjo practices, to go through the stages of meditation, to recite the prayers. All these different aspects are all preparing ourselves for this, that we become a worthy vessel, a worthy body to receive these teachings. The actual teachings that you are the patient, the medicine is the Dharma, and the teacher is the physician, and you are recovering from an illness. To view yourself as one who needs these teachings to help cure you of your confusions, of your illnesses, of ignorance, of delusion, of your neuroses, all these different things and so on that are non-virtue, to purify all these things. So this is all steps to receiving the teachings. And the consequences that will be avoided is like the illustration of a pot, that we think of ourselves as a pot. and then the pot is turned upside down, and we go to the teachings, and we're like a pot that's upside down. So all the teachings are like water that's being poured onto the pot, and the pot is upside down, so the water doesn't go inside the pot. If we're not in the teachings and paying attention to the teachings, it's just going in one ear and out the other. The teachings are just running onto the floor, like the water that's being poured onto the bottom of the pot is just going onto the table that the pot is sitting on and onto the floor and so on. It's not accumulating to anything. Another example is that the pot is a leaky pot, that it has holes in it. It's sitting upright, and the teachings are coming in, the water is coming in, but it's just leaking right out because it's not being taken in and being held and being practiced. It's not being considered. The critical thinking of what the teachings are is not there. So the teachings are just leaking out through the holes of the pot. They're just leaking out through us. It's going in one ear and out the other. It's not coming into our heart center. We're not transforming ourselves to becoming a good practitioner, a good student. And then finally, the pot is like a pot that has poison in it. It has preconceived ideas, wrong views, so that the teachings that are coming into the pot, the water that's being poured into the pot, becomes contaminated with non-virtue, becomes contaminated with the wrong views, that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is not really worthwhile, is not real, is not something that needs to be stabilized within oneself, that the karma, cause and result, is not a natural state of being, a state of humanness, a state of a natural state of spirituality. Karma, cause and result, and that no matter what we do in regard to the Eightfold Path, it still will not lead to the cessation of being able to overcome the attachments of the suffering, that we will not overcome the suffering even through the Eightfold Path. This is a wrong view. If we do take up the Eightfold Path, it will lead to the cessation, but there has to be a dedicated motivation and perseverance to be able to do that. So this is being contaminated. All these teachings and coming into this pot, if you have those wrong views, are going to be contaminated. It's going to be spoiled. So the benefits of the spiritual master are that the bodhisattva who is well guided by the spiritual master will not fall into the lower realms. The lower realms are the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the hell realms. We won't fall into that we are protected because of our Dharma practice, because of our virtue. We're not going to fall into the delusion of the animals. We're not going to fall into the greediness, the miserliness of the hungry ghost. We're not going to fall into the hatred, the aggression of the hell beings. And that we're not going to fall into the hands of an evil person, that we are going to recognize the virtue within ourselves that has been developed within ourselves. And when someone with evil intention approaches us, we will naturally be repulsed by that, and we will be able to not be influenced by that person. And we may even try and be able to help that person to realize their non-virtue. But at the very least, we are not going to be influenced in a negative way by that non-virtuous person. We will not turn away from the Mahayana path, the middle way path. We will not turn away from that. We will see that the middle way is the logical way, is the way in which we can conduct our lives to maintain a mindfulness of our spirituality within this phenomenal nature, this condition of being a human being, this being in samsara, and realizing that we can purify the causes of the samsara and attain nirvana. So it's this Mahayana path that allows us to do that, that shows us the way to do that, is the path to be able to accomplish that. It's the spiritual master who points this out to us. And that we will be able to go beyond the ordinary person's level. That the greatest thing, in talking about taking the teachings from a spiritual master, to be able to take those teachings of the spiritual master and go beyond the level of the spiritual master. If the spiritual master, he's got his or her limitations, or they have taught they will only teach to a certain level. They may have other levels beyond that, but they're only teaching at a certain level. But for us to be able to take those teachings and use that as a catapult to get to the next level is a great gift that you give to the spiritual master who has presented these things to you in the first place. So these are the benefits of having a spiritual master. So recognizing that and being able to abide in that, to be able to rejoice in that. So I hope you you review these things, you read these things, you look at the Jewel Ornamental Liberation and read these things, you Google some of these things, you ask questions about these things. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Hey, Lance, this is me.
Yes.
I have a question. Actually, it was the thought, and I was like, oh, I'm going to see Lance later. Gary inspired me to start reading the 37 practices every morning. So I do that. And so number 5, when evil companions, because you were just talking about like you said like as you get more precise with how you feel when you're around other people, you naturally know like I don't like you start protecting yourself from being drawn into it. So obviously evil companions, the number 5, are associated with the 3 poisons increased. Abandoning evil companions is the Bodhisattva's practice. So just from a practical perspective, since we're talking about, mentorship and guidance right now, and because of what you just said, what does that like in practice? I mean, I understand that like poisons increased and all these other things on that passage right there. From a practical perspective, how would that look like?
Well, you didn't read the middle part. It says, when evil companions are associated with, the 3 poisons increase, comma. The activities of listening, pondering, and meditation decline, and love and compassion are extinguished. Abandoning evil companions is the Bodhisattva's practice. So in other words, if associating with them is causing these things to happen, we need to be able to energize the activities of listening, the activities of pondering, the meditation. Those things that were declining, we need to energize. We need to love and have compassion more stronger. We need to re-energize the bodhicitta. This is how we overcome those things.
Around the potential person who is an evil companion?
No, it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with that. It's what's happening within inside of ourselves.
Oh, I can see this because I could see like gossiping increasing or idle talk,
Sure.
which is incompatible with like some of these things that are in the passage. Okay, well, I was just thinking, this is because I work with kids. I'm thinking about like when it's like ethical morally to be like, oh, I've got a 13-year-old, 14-year-old who doesn't feel good to be near spiritually, because I work with kids, where I kind of get a vibe like there's something not quite right here, but I never want to give up on a kid ever.
Right, and you never want to give up on your bodhicitta.
Correct.
But it's saying that when you associate with evil companions who are influencing you to give up your bodhicitta,
Yeah.
that's what this is saying.
Okay, I gotcha.
So
I'm
when,
gonna ponder more because of who I'm near right now.
all right, that's good. That's what you got to do.
I know I'm gonna assign myself when I read again in the morning in 8 hours.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question? All right. Well, I'm sorry to start, with such a lecture, but it was necessary to get this all out, and through the repetition of doing this over and over again, synapses start to close, and eventually, the importance of all this begins to make sense, and we reaffirm our commitment to bring this into ourselves. So that's why it's necessary to do this. So we're trying to establish this mindfulness of the importance of this. If we take this for granted and only experience it one time, we're going to be like that pot that's got the holes in it. All this beautiful stuff is going to come out, and it's just going to leak out very quickly.
Lance, the more you're teaching, I just want to say because you made a point to say you go back and you listen and you refine your own presentation. You've got, you're doing such a great job. I can tell you're making steady improvements, and it's tremendously impactful in ways that I can see it. So thank you for going back and taking that time.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Would anybody else like to make a quick comment? Okay. All right. Well, then the Umze this evening is Mark. Mark, would you like to recite the dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgun on page 21 and 22? So just let me say, the dedication prayer is very important because what it's doing, it is sealing up our motivation, it is sealing up our accumulation of the wisdom and the skillful means that we have been filled with through these teachings. We're sealing it up so it doesn't leak out. So that's the meaning behind the dedication prayers, that we are dedicating this to others. We're not selfishly holding it for ourselves, or we're not wantonly just letting it flow through us and not taken to heart. So we're sealing it up so the motivation remains strong for the benefit of other beings. Okay,
So
Mark.
this is the dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgon.
Correct.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of the Yidams and assemblies of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions. Please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected by the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a shravka, or pratyakat Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm and mislead Maras and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise even for a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die with confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Om, ah, hum. Om, ah, hum. Om, ah, hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Mark. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, Mark. Lance, thank you.
so much.
Thank you. Gavin, can you hold on for a minute, please?
Thanks, Lance.
Sure.
Okay.